The widespread fighter attacks on German transportation in the fast-moving situation in France after D-Day brought a new kind of problem to strategic control. Much has been said of the part the fighters of the 8th Air Force played in the Normandy campaign in blocking enemy efforts to reinforce the beachhead defenses. Literally everything that wiggled on the roads north of the Loire was passed and flattened by the marauding Thunderbolts, Mustangs, and Lightnings. In that action, which lasted several weeks, Control was able to play a vital part in making use of the intelligence as it flowed in. The fighters themselves were a prime source of information about German rail and highway movements. An 8 Fighter Command had set up a very elaborate system to get the reports flowing rapidly to the ground forces and to all air units. Many times, however, it was possible to make even more immediate use what was the pilot found. The groups usually worked in assigned areas, relieving one another as fuel ran low. It became established practice for the control center to get reports by radio from one set of fighters and to pass his information at once to any other fighters in position to attack. In this way, the enemy was given no respite whatsoever. Even if a column of trucks or tanks was sighted by a group of fighters just as they were leaving their area to come home, too low on fuel or ammunition to attack, the target could be assigned to another, fresher outfit. And so very few trucks or tanks got through in daylight. This system required close liaison between the wing intelligence sections and their control rooms. And at Saffron, an open telephone line was maintained from the war room to the chief controller's dais. Every bit of information on enemy movement was placed before the controller at once, transcribed into the fighter grid, so he could use it without delay. Likewise, everything reported by the groups on our /T was relayed by the group controllers to the A2 section to be sent out in high-priority teletype messages through intelligence channels to Ajax and Pine Tree. A similar system was used at Sawston and Walcott. In preparation for the D-Day operations, the control system had been extended to the west, with emergency fixing and homing installations as far west as Predanak at Land's End. On some occasions when pilots had found hot targets and were not sure of their locations, these western stations were used to take fixes on the aircraft. Several concentrations of German armor and transport were pinpointed in this way. All this is one more illustration of the extreme flexibility of the control system. It was not just an information center, but a vital and helpful force which followed its boys from one end of Nazi land to the other, guiding and counseling them and shepherding them home. There is one more angle of the Continental Control that must be told as a part of this story. From the moment our troops began to take airfields in France, the aircraft of the 8th began making emergency landings on the continent whenever the risk of an overwater crossing were too great. By the time the front had moved up into Belgium and into the Siegfried Line, the homing problem had reached serious proportions. The tactical air forces, the U.S. 9th and the RAF 2nd Tactical Air Force, were equipped to take care of their own aircraft, but they had no facilities for handling the flood of B-24s, B-17s, P-47s, and P-51s from England. On 2 occasions, there were so many 8th Air Force airplanes on one continental field that the tactical group station there couldn't even take off for missions. The control of Saffron was fully aware of this problem because many of the aircraft in trouble would be calling on B or C or D channels, asking for directions to the nearest base. Sitting in Saffron Walden, the controllers were unable to be of much help, because there were no communications they could use to find out which fields in France or Belgium were serviceable, and because at that distance they could not fix the aircraft accurately anyway. Time passed, and the continental fixture system so badly needed by the 8th did not seem to be forthcoming. Finally, the 65th Fighter Wing took the bull by the horns and dispatched a control liaison team with radio equipment to go to Belgium and join Headquarters 9 Tactical Air Command. General Quesada, 9 TAC commander, hospitably allowed this unit to have space in his control center, and the controllers immediately started paying their way by relieving the Tactical Air Command control staff of some of the burdens of handling 8th Air Force aircraft. There were only 2 of these controllers, and they had to work long hours without relief. They had no precedent to follow. They had to depend on the fixing facilities of the 9 TAC, as they had none of their own. But they did succeed in keeping track of which fields were the best ones to use amid all the chaos and confusion of the war. And they established direct radio contact with Saffron at a time when it had been virtually impossible to get any information back and forth in less than a day or 2. They were thus able to perform a service through the TAC control as well by giving information on 8th Air Force missions due to enter 9 TAC territory. On occasion, they used the TAC Y service to advantage in passing information to 8th Air Force fighters on C Channel. This tiny detachment, operating without portfolio, succeeded by sheer ingenuity in bridging a very difficult gap until the Nut House establishment finally got going at Wittem. The controllers were then commandeered to help staff Nut House, and the direct liaison with 9 TAC came to an end, except for what could be done by telephone from Nut House. The value of the work these men had done was demonstrated by the fact that not long after they moved out, the overloading of the 9th's homing facilities by 8th Air Force again got so bad that 9 TAC had to announce it would cease fixing aircraft other than its own. Under this pressure, the 8th then set up a B-channel fixer net with a triangulation table at Nut House, and toward the end of the war was able to give very good service to aircraft from England that had to make emergency landings on the other side. The job that was done by this Detachment X of the 65th Fighter Wing at 9 TAC during the difficult period October-November 1944 stands as an example of why strategic fighter control in the ETO has been the constantly living, growing, improving thing throughout its 2-year history. Those are the highlights of 2 years. If this jumping backward and forward from Saffron to Nut House, from 1943 to 1945 to D-Day, has been a bit confusing, the chronicle table which follows may set things right. If you're interested in the details of what the 65th Fighter Wing finally wound up with in the way of control after almost 2 years of trial and error, read on into the second part of the book. If you want the drama, the death, and the glory of what the pilots found and did out over Nazi land, you can read it in the books that have been written and will be written by the men who were there. If you just want to get a general idea of what they did at the Saffron Walden Fish and Chips Emporium for the 2 eventful years, you've had it, chum. This is it. Tailpiece. Saffron Walden for a while was in Buzz Bomb Alley. And if this hasn't got anything to do with strategic fighter control, it's certainly added spice to living, nevertheless. At first, the Germans sent all their V-1s over from the French coast towards London, and they didn't get up into Essex much. But then when the war overran the Pas de Calais, the Jerrys started trucking their Buzz bombs out across the North Sea from northern Holland on Heinkel 111 bombers, releasing them about 140 miles from London. This put the stream of evil rattlers right in across East Anglia, and many's the time the night duty shifts in the ops room could watch the plots coming straight across the board towards Saffron, then step through the door and hear that unmistakable sound coming across the dark heath. The crucial moment in the career of a buzz bomb was when his engine cut out. In the sudden silence, the world of humans within earshot caught and held its breath, knowing that half a ton of explosive was diving at reckless speed towards the earth, somewhere. The only real casualties from buzz bombs at Saffron were the air/sea rescue control staff, who all tried to get under one table simultaneously on one night when a V1 engine cut out right overhead. They didn't all make it, and there were some bruised noggins. Meanwhile, the perverse fly bomb glided 10 miles before it struck. One hit the town, others struck in nearby fields. The nearest one to the ops room was one that cruised by like a bat out of hell about 9 o'clock one night, Right on the treetops, just over the back fence, the bright orange glow off his jet engine racing alone like a ball of fire, the fantastic rattle shaking the walls and windows and knocking bits of plaster down. It was exciting, right enough, but it left one filled with foreboding. This augur of evil boring blindly and senselessly through the night.